Hey guys, hope you're all well. I think an awful lot of you I know, some of you I don't, but as Marissa said, I'm Mike. I'm key account manager for accommodation clients at the student room, so I will be your point of contact for anything accommodation related. It's really good of you to join us today. Obviously, these are very strange and difficult times, and hopefully you're all coping with them well. The idea of today's session is to talk to you a bit about what we're seeing within the market, what we're seeing our students talk about, and try and engage, how you can try and engage with them as effectively as possible. I know from the conversations I've been having, what a lot of the kind of pressure points I'm sure you're all feeling are, as we know, universities are closed down now, students are stuck with a lot of questions regarding their accommodation. I know it's a key issue for a lot of you in terms of what to do with students' contracts, and obviously getting that balancing act between making sure that students are happy and supported, and at the same time making sure that you're providing the best service possible and you're safeguarding your own companies and your own staff. Obviously, a lot of other issues thrown up. Looking forward as well, we don't know what is going to happen. We don't know when this is going to come to an end. There's a lot of uncertainty around the next academic year. There's a lot of uncertainty around exams. And obviously with things like clearing being an absolutely key period in the accommodation sector, trying to get as much insight and understand what students are thinking and how they're going to be acting is as vital as possible. There's also the issues around international students who, obviously with all the travel lockdowns that we're seeing globally at the moment, even if those are lifted, there's a lot of uncertainty relating to what they will be doing next year, whether or not they'll be willing to travel, and when it will be that they're travelling to start their studies. Just to give you a little bit of background as well for those of you who are new to the student room, in a nutshell, we are, as you can see on the screen, the largest online student community in the UK. We reach 75% of UK students on a monthly basis, and we have sorry, that's on an annual basis, and 10 million monthly visits with 3 million registered users. They're a highly engaged audience. They very much buy into what we do. We are a community, and everything we do is to support students. So they have a real position of trust with us and with who we work with. They come to us to discuss all manner of issues. It might be where to study, it might be help with their academics, it might be personal issues that they need help with, it might just be to talk about what was on TV last night or the football. But accommodation is obviously a huge topic for them, and therefore we see an awful lot of conversation. On that note, the expert that we have in regards to what people are talking about on forums is Grace, so I'm going to hand over to her. Obviously, as we said, if there are any questions at the end, I'll be on hand along with Grace to answer them. But hopefully you find this very useful and productive session.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. As Mike and Marissa have said, my name is Grace and I'm the community manager here at the student room. So what I'm going to be doing now is talking to you a little bit about how students are feeling, the kind of conversations we're seeing on the student room, which are probably reflected in the conversations you're having with students at the moment. And we'll also be talking about what you can be doing to build your online community, as we can't do things face-to-face now. It's really, really important that online community is at the focus of your strategies and making sure you can build those up and keep talking to students and keep the conversation going. And then we'll talk about any pitfalls to avoid as well, anything that you may be concerned about. And then, as Marissa said, at the end, we've got the Q&A. So do keep any questions and we'll be happy to answer them. So looking into, oh, just did that without realizing I clicked my slide, sorry about that. So we'll now look into how students are feeling. So over the last few weeks, we've been collecting kind of word clouds of all of the discussions that are happening on the student room and looking into some of the conversations that people are having and any keywords that are kind of standing out here really. So you can see here, this is for the whole site over the last couple of weeks, and cancelled exams and schools closing are really key factors for a lot of the people who are on our site. And there's a lot of confusion, there's a lot of anxiousness, uncertainty, as it is for everybody. And this is something which people are really concerned about and wanting to discuss with others. Now, we also did this for our accommodation providers as well, our accommodation conversations. So this is all of the keywords that have come out from threads and discussions happening across the student room that are around accommodation and what they need to do. And you can see here that concern is a massive one sticking out. I'm sure a lot of the students living in accommodation at the moment or considering applying for accommodation this year are really concerned about the future. But one of the key words you can see here in the top left corner is help, and they need help at the moment. They're really concerned about what's going to happen. They're confused about anything that they need to be doing, what their legalities are. And this is something which people really need support with, and this is where you can provide that support for them. So from our site statistics over the last few weeks, you can see here that we've had a massive increase in the number of posters coming to the student room. So in our student accommodation forum, which is dedicated to students talking about particularly accommodation questions, we've seen a 40% increase in posts from the 15th of March to the 2nd of April. So huge number of post increases there. People really concerned about what they should be doing in the future and what they should be doing at the moment. You can also see here that our university section has seen 45% increase in posts, so students talking about what they should be doing when they're currently at university and also talking about their applications and how that's going to work. And this is a massive topic of conversation on TSR at the moment. We can also see here that our mental health forum has sadly seen a large increase in the number of posts. We've had 60% more people coming to talk about their mental health on the site. A lot of people suffering with anxiety and people suffering with their mental health during the lockdown period, and all of the implications of major events that are affecting them now, which obviously is really difficult. We do try to support students as much as we can. We have a mental health suicide support charity on site who help all of our students and are available throughout the day so people can talk to them if they need to. And we also have fantastic volunteers who get involved in the conversations and support as much as possible. So looking now at conversations that we're seeing on site, and students are obviously really anxious about application and accommodation choices. You know, one of the key questions for a lot of potential applicants is, will I even be able to go to university at all in September? Regardless of the fact that exams are cancelled, they may not be able to get into the university that they have chosen for their first choice, for example. But then even if they do get into university, even if it is their first choice, will universities be open again in September? And if they are not, what does that mean for their accommodation, especially if they're moving further away from home? And this is really key. I'm worried that they are even able to move away from home is something that a lot of year 13s are experiencing, especially if they've chosen university choices that are really far away. They're also obviously really worried about their loved ones and themselves in this really difficult time, as everybody is. Worried about their future. They are using humour to cope as much as they possibly can. We've seen quite a few threads pop up where people are discussing things in a humorous way, sharing memes, trying to bolster each other up and be positive as much as possible. And they're connecting with others. And this is something that's really key now when we're in this lockdown period. Connecting with others can be quite difficult at times. Somewhere like the student room, where you can come on and talk to people in your position who you may not know, but experience the same things that you're going through and you want some advice and support. This is where they can come and talk to people and share their experiences about how they're feeling and what they should be doing. So some really common questions that we're seeing at the moment from year 13s and current students. So first off, as I mentioned, will I even be able to start university next year is a big one. And obviously these questions are things that will be answered throughout the next few months. They're not something that we can predict at the moment, but we can try and be as supportive to those people as possible. A lot of people talking about having to resit exams as well and how that will work. So from the latest Ofqual update to do with exams, it looks like if resets were to happen, so if students weren't happy with the calculated grade they are going to receive in July, August time, we're not sure of the exact results today yet, then they can resit those exams in September. And if that's the case, they probably will not receive the results for those exams until January time. And how that will affect their application. Will they still be able to attend university for 2020 technically, even though it would probably start in 2021, and what that would mean for their application and accommodation if they were looking at going away from home and starting at university further away. That's something that is obviously a massive unknown, but we're trying to be as supportive as we can for students on site around those questions. And also if their teams concerned about how they're going to view accommodation if they're unable to go to the city. A lot of people were banking on open days coming up in June and July, and now that they are not taking place and they are virtual open days, that means they're unable to head over to cities they were particularly interested in and unable to view accommodation themselves. We're told and we tell students that going along to open days, going and visiting the city that they're interested in is vital to them picking a choice. So having the choice taken away from them now, they're obviously feeling the pressure. And not knowing what the accommodation is going to look like, or not having any experiences of that before they head along to university in September is something that obviously is a little bit concerning. For our current students, we're also having to look at questions around mainly contracts. Will they have to pay their rent for term 3 after the Easter holidays? How that will work if they're tied into a contract. That means if their landlord isn't being supportive, how they can get some help and support around that. And will they be asked to leave their accommodation as well if accommodation providers need to shut? For example, if there's a case of COVID-19 in an accommodation block, what will happen to them and how that will impact their living situation. So obviously really massive concerns here, which are quite rightly something which they are really worried about. We've also ran a TSR poll in the last few weeks around what people are thinking about their university choices in response to the COVID-19 situation. And we found that 15% of students are considering changing their university choice. And that's obviously a massive impact on a variety of different things, including accommodation. So definitely want to keep an eye on. We want to be asking those students why they're looking at changing their university choices and if there's anything we can support them with and what their main key concerns and worries are. And that's what we're doing on the forums at the moment. So some conversations that we're seeing on site, these are taken from real discussions that are happening, and these are quotes from students who are concerned. So the first one here that we saw in a discussion around leaving for university in September and applications, how that's going to work. Somebody mentioning that they don't want to be alone in a new place, that things are in lockdown, still unable to meet new people or interact properly in that new place. And they're feeling pretty lost. And you can imagine if you were in that situation, not knowing if we were still going to be in lockdown in September, how that would affect their decisions, their choices, their ability to interact and meet new people. When you move into accommodation, obviously a key question for a lot of students is, will they have nice flatmates? Will they get along with the people they live with? And if they're unable to even interact with those people, then that's something which obviously is a really key concern and will dramatically impact their university experience in their minds at the moment. So we want to make sure that, again, as I said, we're supporting them in any decisions that they're making and encouraging them to consider all options. We've then had this conversation here from somebody who had to move back home due to coronavirus, and they're asking about where they stand with regards to remaining rent they had to pay on their tenancy agreement. So this is a conversation that's coming up a lot on the student room at the moment, and how it works in terms of logistics, paying rent, contracts and accommodation providers, and how supportive they can be towards their students. Obviously, as Mike said earlier, it's a really hard and fine balancing act. Being transparent as you can with students about the situation that they're in and that you're in is really helpful. I think a lot of people are really just concerned that they're not getting information, and being clear and transparent is really key here. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We then have another conversation here around somebody talking about their courses being completely moved online, and it means that they have no need for their accommodation and they can study from home. So it's a question that they haven't had to leave their accommodation, but they just have no need for it. And then looking at how they can leave their accommodation without being liable for the last semester's rent payment. So this is somebody who's obviously gone through a lot of difficult decisions in working out what it is that they need to do. They want to stay, but they don't have any need for it, and how that will affect them and paying their rent. And this is again something that we're seeing time and time again on the student room. People being concerned about how they're going to afford to pay that last semester's worth of rent. But alongside all of these questions around the COVID-19 pandemic, we're also seeing a lot of regular questions as well, and people still asking the usual things. And it's really important to remember for a lot of students, they are trying to continue on as business as normal, essentially. They're trying to be positive and see if they can continue on with their application in September. And by doing that, they're wanting to ask all the questions they normally would, and it's important to not forget that. For example, we're still seeing questions on what accommodation is better for my needs, and what is it like to live in this accommodation in this city, worried about getting on with flatmates, and how early should they apply for accommodation. All of those key questions still need to be answered alongside all of the other questions around the COVID-19 pandemic. So how can you help and your official rep help on our forums? There are lots of different things that you can be getting involved with, and getting involved in the forum and building an online community in general is, as I said earlier, something that will be really, really useful to keeping your business and your brand within students' understanding and keep them involved and interested in what you're doing. So community building is nurturing, connecting and growing your online community. So your forum and the Student Accommodation Forum is a public group to help support and generate curiosity and involve people as much as you can in what you're doing and how you're doing it. As I said, there are still lots of student queries about what it's like living in the city that your accommodation is involved in and how that works. They're still looking at hopefully moving out in September, and so they want you to be responding to these general student queries as much as possible and still be involved in trying to get back towards day-to-day life. Highlighting features and benefits of your specific accommodation is something that would also be really useful here in a way that doesn't feel kind of salesy or marketing-like. I'll mention more about why we should be avoiding any hard marketing tactics when speaking to students at the moment, but something that you can be doing is highlighting benefits without pushing it towards young people. Being as supportive and understanding as you can to not only the students, but also parents and carers and other people involved in decision making is really, really important. And this is also a perfect time to mention and highlight any virtual tours or videos that you may have of your accommodation and student experiences living in your accommodation, as that's something that people won't get to talk to other students about now, as they won't be able to go and visit students currently living in accommodation, for example. So this is where something like a current resident or resident AMAs, which is Ask Me Anything, is a fantastic way to build curiosity and interest in your accommodation on the student room and on the forums. And it really shares an authentic student experience. It gives an insight into life in your accommodation. With social distancing, we can't go and speak to somebody who's currently living in accommodation block, asking them how their experience is, what they've enjoyed the most, and all the other normal questions that a student, a parent or a carer would be interested in asking somebody living in an accommodation facility. So this is a fantastic way to do that, but virtually instead. You can have somebody who's currently living within an accommodation, or somebody who was living previously, or a resident manager, for example, coming in and supporting students who are considering moving into the accommodation block and want to know a little bit more about it before they come along. So, for example, you can see here, I'll show you something that we have from an official rep who was on site. So this is somebody from Solent University, and they were showing students their questions, answering questions, and wanting to know a little bit more about how they can support students. And they're just having a first year student come onto site and saying that they'd love to help with any questions that you may be having, and they can support as much as possible. So trying to link to people who are able to give relevant advice here is important, but showing as much as possible enjoyment for the university that they're studying at and living at is really key here. And you can do this with current residents or resident managers, as I've mentioned. So, mainly with your forum, feeling connected is really important here. students want to feel that they have still got the connections and the ability to speak to somebody as they would in a normal situation and normal circumstances. It's a chance to brand build, and brand building is something that is really important in an online community, but in a space where people don't feel that they are being marketed to. And this is just about being a member of the community, showcasing what it is you have to offer as an accommodation provider, and shining that light into what it's like renting with you and the student living experience, and creating content and that community around you, and getting people involved and wanting to speak to you about what it's like is really important. So obviously there are so many different options with accommodation, and you want to be somebody that is seen within the community as friendly, supportive, able to talk to, and just generally somebody who wants to be involved in their life and be as supportive as possible. It takes time to brand build, it takes time to get involved in the community, but the rewards that you get afterwards are worth it 100%. And you can see here, I'll show you another example from one of our current official reps, who are Hallam University, Sheffield Hallam, and they have some students who have come online, and they talk about what it's like to be a student at Sheffield Hallam, and all the benefits of being at Hallam and what it's like living in Sheffield in general. And you can see here that they've got involved in the forums in a way which doesn't specifically market Sheffield Hallam as a university, but it showcases what Sheffield has to offer and what students at Sheffield Hallam can go on to do. So you can see here that it was actually posted within our fitness forum, so not typical for an official rep, but something which we encourage as much as possible if you can to get involved in these conversations. And somebody asking, would you exercise more if you knew how much it improved your mental health? So you can see here, it doesn't sound relevant at all, but actually what they've done here is it created some content around the fact that a Sheffield Hallam student who studies psychology has set up something called the Happiness Bootcamp. And this is something where they can talk about creating happiness and mental health awareness through fitness classes, and showcasing what it is that a Sheffield Hallam student can do after they've completed their degree. And so it's indirect marketing, it's not showcasing exactly what's going on, but actually showing how somebody has taken the skills that they've learned at Sheffield Hallam and applied them to something in the real world, and how wonderful it is that they've then succeeded in this, and showcasing that and talking about that in a way which they're actually just sparking a conversation where students probably want to talk about that anyway. There's a lot of conversation on site around exercise and mental health, and so getting involved in the conversations that are already happening, but showcasing some fantastic things that Sheffield Hallam students have done is a wonderful way of building up a community. People can talk to them, see them as a person and as a human behind the official rep, and want to be involved within that community. So we'll now look at tone of voice and how that works. I've shown you just there about something that Sheffield Hallam did and how it works for them. And I'll go through why that worked for them and how they did it just here. So, as I've just said, remembering the human is the most important thing when it comes to talking to students and building an online community. So everyone behind the username is a real person, real feelings, real worries, real concerns, and being as empathetic and professional and kind as you possibly can in this situation is really important. And that's because even though we're all in these really difficult times, we're busy, we're concerned, we have our own worries, we need to remember that everybody is feeling the same. And how would we want to be treated if we were, an 18-year-old really concerned about their future? Being mindful and sensitive of students going through a difficult time is really important. And this is something to consider. People may be recently bereaved, they may be going through a grieving process, they may be ill themselves or have worries or anxieties around that. And so being as mindful and sensitive to people's individual circumstances, as I'm sure you all are already, is really important, especially online, where your responses isn't just seen by the person that you're talking to, but by a wider audience as well. Some students may be really worried or upset. You need to be helping them to make balanced decisions. Now, obviously, in this time, we don't know what is going to happen, and that is something that is okay to be upfront and honest about, and saying that we don't know what's going to happen, but with the facts that you do have and the decisions that have been made based on the evidence that you've got, you're able to give them this information. And this is where being clear and transparent is really key. And making sure that as much as possible you're trying to calm worries down, instead of using vague language which may confuse people and kind of inflame the worries a little bit. So sticking to facts and evidence and decision making and keeping that process really simple and easy to follow here is something that I would really recommend doing. You can also report any worrying or urgent content to us. So you may see that on the student room, there are some students that are experiencing some really difficult circumstances and mental health concerns. If you ever see that, you are also a member of our community and anybody can report any of this content to us. There is a small flag on the top right-hand corner of every post and you can let us know if you see anything worrying or concerning. Please don't feel that you have to take that on yourself. We can support students and we have a process for doing that too. So I'm going to show you now some examples of some really good responses from official reps that are currently used in the student room and how they did this. Now, this isn't directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic. It's still early days at the moment, and there are still lots of questions happening and people getting involved. So this is just general good responses from members of our community, but they really reflect the values that I was just talking about and being as supportive as possible. So here we have student youth who are based in Edinburgh. And this is somebody who'd asked about a particular query they had in regard to a semester abroad. So this isn't something that was particularly directed towards Edinburgh, and I'll show you here the example. Excuse me for moving my screen and then how it seems to not like opening on the shared page. So you can see here that somebody had posted in the student accommodation area of the site asking about finding short-term accommodation. So they're due to study abroad in semester 2 of the next academic year. They're not looking into accommodation options yet, but they're asking whether it would have been difficult to find one. So you can imagine similar questions coming up at the moment around looking at studying abroad for international students wanting to come to the UK. They obviously can't look into their accommodations options at the moment by coming over, but what should they be doing? How should they be considering what their next steps are? And you can see here that the student risks come in. First thing they did was tag the user in, which is really important so that they understand that you're talking directly to them. They know that this is a response which is direct and personal for them on a forum. So many people can get involved in the conversation. As you can see here, somebody else asked another question. So they want to know that you are speaking directly to them, answering their query. And you can see here that the lovely Emma was fantastic and really giving general advice about the accommodation sector and then offering some specific examples for what it's like in Edinburgh in particular. And just being wonderful and supportive and encouraging people to contact accommodation providers early to avoid disappointment, giving really good advice. And this is a wonderful example of how you can be supportive in a general way and get involved in a conversation that may not directly reference you, and showcase your supportive services and staff without doing it in a really kind of pushy marketing type way. And Emma has done a wonderful job at brand building here and showing her, why student use Edinburgh may be something that people can consider. And if somebody was actually considering going to Edinburgh, reading this, it would be a fantastic example of somebody who then may be interested in asking some more questions about that particular accommodation. So somebody now looking at the concerns of legalities to do with an accommodation provider and a tenancy agreement. And this person here, the student housing company, Jess, was asking some questions back to that person around their situation. So again, somebody who doesn't directly reference them, but offering up just good advice that they would give to any of their tenants to somebody who is really concerned. And it may not have been something which is particularly about them. And we'll have another look here. So Somebody asking, can a landlord charge full rent but not give you keys or a moving in date? So somebody has been asked to pay rent from the beginning of July, but they haven't got their keys yet. They're really concerned, obviously, about should they consider still paying the rent if they haven't got their keys. They've already paid a deposit. They're unsure of the legalities of it. And here, as I mentioned, the student housing company coming in and saying, doesn't make any sense about not being able to call or email a landlord to ask about this information, asking them to check the contract, making sure that they understand that there are different options available, and showing off the fact that they are really supportive and allowing people to pay or installments or a full payment if that's easier. And giving it over as information about their circumstances, and asking them to see if it applies to those circumstances, means that anybody reading this would have a look through and know what the student housing company is about and what they're offering, without having to kind of look into that themselves. So a really fantastic way of showcasing that without doing that in a pushy way. And also at the end, just saying that they really hope that they can get them sorted, peace of mind. Obviously, it's a difficult situation, and they're remembering that that person's a human and they want to be supported as possible. And then just mentioning if they want any further advice, message, and they'll help where they can. And that's a fantastic way of showcasing that you are supportive, and knowing that if I were going to do something for that somebody on a forum website, how would they treat their tenants when they come along to the accommodation and live with them, and seeing that you feel instantly more comforted that someone is able to be there and be supportive to that young person. So we then here have somebody who is really worried about sharing a room in another country, and wanting to know a little bit more about whether that's going to be an issue or whether they should do it. And you can see here that Student Reefs Edinburgh, again, fantastic advice from Emma, has given a lot more information than necessary, but is a fantastic way of providing niche details. So niche details are something that young people are really interested in, students are really interested in, especially in a time like this, where you are unable to showcase those kind of little bits and bobs that you normally would by doing accommodation tours. Putting those niche details online and letting people see those is fantastic. So this is somebody who here has shared their experience as well. So they're asking about Exeter or any university. Emma has come in. Excuse the scrolling, I know it can be a little bit off-putting. There we go. Emma has come in and said it's her personal experience. So it's not necessarily something where she's kind of showcasing what it is about Edinburgh or student use, for example, but saying her own personal experience. She shared a room when she had a year abroad in Taiwan, which was amazing, and can give a really fantastic detailed answer as to what they should be considering. And it's wonderful, the response that they got. They got 4 upvotes here, so reps, which means that people found that answer really, really helpful. People only get a certain number of reps a day, so to give those away to somebody is great, and it means that they have provided a fantastic answer. And just showing that they are a human behind the brand, and that somebody wants to support them is fantastic for young people, and that's something that the user really appreciated. Now, heading on into our last example of a good response. So I mentioned earlier about getting involved in the community and showcasing yourself as a brand that wants to be involved with TSR and the community and the student community in general. And somebody asked for some tips on how to stop getting bored. So in the lockdown, they've watched Netflix too much, which I'm sure is applicable for some of us as well. I can definitely say that I have watched a little bit too much Netflix in the last few days. And you can see here that Student Reefs in Swansea, just really simple, and it didn't take too much time at all to get involved, I'm sure. But just saying, reading a book, getting relaxed, and they've actually done a blog on top reads as well, and linking out to that blog and saying, hey, take a look, we've got a list of those amazing books already, you don't have to go looking for it, that has helped you. It's fantastic. And then adding in their name afterwards, making sure that again people realise it's a human, but just offering a little bit of support. It seems like a really simple answer, but actually showcasing a blog where they've done something amazing is fantastic here. So things to avoid when it comes to getting involved in conversations on site and building your online community. So something that we encourage all our official reps not to do is get involved in debates or discussions, conspiracy theories and speculation about COVID-19. There are a lot of them on site and in the wider online community, and it's something to avoid as much as possible. We want to be sticking to facts as brands and giving out really clear and concise information, and getting involved in speculation in any way goes against that brand building. So we want to make sure that we're not doing that. As I've mentioned several times, avoiding marketing speech or being opportunistic is important here. Students are going through a really worrying time. It's uncertain, they're confused, they're concerned, they're anxious. And the last thing that they are looking for is somebody kind of sliding into a discussion that they've started about this anxiety and saying, hey, have you considered coming to our accommodation? It's great. But with no context, no understanding of what they're talking about. It's just an opportunistic way to showcase, and it's something that actually turns students off, and they find it really off-putting. They don't want to engage in anybody who does any of that, and it really is quite concerning for a lot of students and makes them want to avoid that brand. So being opportunistic, using marketing speech, copying and pasting text from one reply to another reply and spamming that across the site is something that must be avoided in these really difficult and uncertain times. Also, closing off a conversation in any way. So if somebody is asking about an accommodation, wanting to know a little bit more, then it's important not to close that conversation down and stop that after you've given an answer. Always end a conversation with, and if you have any more questions, we're more than happy to support and help. So please do get in contact, and we can advise as much as possible, as some of the really great examples did. Also linking off to FAQs with no context. It's important not to do this, as it can confuse people and send them off to a web page which may actually not have the information that they're looking for. Ask a little bit more about the question that they are concerned about, and try and take those answers from your FAQs. If you, for example, had a coronavirus FAQ on your web page, and put those within the messages when you're talking to somebody on site. So it means that they don't have to go off site to find this information. It's all there for them. And anybody else who is reading that conversation can also see and get that information without having to leave the site as well. So this is really important, as remembering the lurker is key when doing any online brand building or communication, especially in a forum site like TSR. So for every one person that posts, there are hundreds of people that will then read that conversation and make judgments based on the answers that are given within that discussion. And this is where you need to be as helpful as possible and including as much information as possible on the web page, so that anybody reading doesn't have to go off of the web page to get that information. It's all there in front of them, and they can see somebody who's helpful and supportive right there, and know that they can ask any questions to that person because they've shown what a useful member of the community they are. Also, if you're doing any coronavirus update threads, so for example, you are changing a policy or showcasing something that you're doing throughout the coronavirus pandemic, use the city and provider name in any thread titles, so discussion titles, so that if people are using TSR and they are coming onto site, then they can see exactly what coronavirus update this is for. So many people are creating coronavirus updates that it can be difficult to find sometimes. So making sure you're clearly stating the city and provider name is really important here. Always keeping conversation on the public forum too, making sure that you aren't privately messaging people if they haven't asked for it. That's because people don't like the unsolicited private messages on the student room, but also keeping the conversation public means that any lurkers who are reading that conversation can see all the information you're providing. You don't have to repeat yourself, and they don't have to come in and come find the information from elsewhere. And always make sure you're quoting and tagging within your replies as well, so people know that they're talking to you, that you are talking to them. So with site navigation, I can quickly show you some key forums, how to watch forums and rep alerts if you are unsure on how to do this already. So we'll just do that here for you. So this is the main forum webpage, and this is our homepage here. So you can see here that I am watching some forums, and that is so that I can make sure that anything that comes up, I'm the first person to see which threads are being commented in, and I might want to get involved in those conversations. So watching a forum is really important. And you can do that really easily here. So we'll just head to this forum. We have the Universities Minister coming on to TSR on Friday, and if I was interested in watching that forum, just click that button there. It will ask me if I want any email notifications as well, and I can let them know. So you can either get a daily update by email, or weekly update by email, or no email notifications if you prefer not to. And I'm now watching the forum, which means when I come onto my homepage, I can see exactly what the first conversation within that forum is, and as I said, I can get involved in that conversation if I want to. The same with discussions and threads as well. For example, to say that I wanted to watch a thread, the watch button is just there for me. I can click that, and that means I can keep an eye on it. So if you're replying to anybody during a conversation and you want to just keep an eye on it, you can watch a thread, and that way you can keep up to date with what's going on. So what we've also done within our presentation here is provided a kind of list of helpful links for you all, so that you can watch any of these threads, keep an eye on them, and that way you can keep up to date with what's going on really easily. Also included a link to our official rep lounge and rep support. Everybody who joins Student Room has an official rep support thread where you can have a private contact with members of the community team who work on site, and we can help support you and help you make the most of your official rep tool. So for more information about kind of setting up a rep account, you can speak to Mike, who, as I said, is on the call already. We saw him earlier, so he's able to support with anything. For all of our existing official reps who've joined the call as well, you can also talk to our rep managers, Mallory and Oscar, who on site are known as Maple Leaf and Snow Princess 7. If you tag them in your feedback thread, they're more than happy to support. Thank you so much for coming along to the rep training today. I do hope it was really helpful for you. I know these are really uncertain and worrying times, and by being involved and wanting to be involved in the community as much as possible and support them, you are doing a fantastic job at making sure that young people's anxieties are eased a little bit in these really worrying times. So thank you so much. And any questions, please do let us know. Thank you.
Hi guys, so we now have the Q&A chat open, so please do add in any